Hello, class. I'm just going to do a video on how to do maybe like a garden or flowered areas because sometimes those are needed. And it's just an idea because there's lots of ways you can do this, and I think scale really becomes important in how you do this. But here's one way of doing it. I'm going to keep my ground other, and it's not a sports field like my last set of videos, but I'll keep it in this layer. It could be its own layer, just as fine too, and I'll call it flower beds. And I'm going to make the layer, and I'm going to start with like a yellow color, which again, I've said it many times, I find yellow to be a very vibrant color and good when dealing with grass and other landscaping. I'm going to pick an area maybe to put a garden or flower beds, and so maybe it'll be this guy. Alright, so yellow, and I'm just going to trace a new object in here wherever you think this might work. Again, I could draw a circle. In this case, drawing a circle might actually be better than just clicking around, but this is often a shortcut way of doing it. So I'm going to do this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a couple grains to it. So I'm going to go to Effects, I'm going to go to Stylize, I'm going to go to Texture, I'm going to go to Grain. Now, the regular grain is going to be the one that comes up, and if you can see on the screen, if I zoom in, it's not too bad. It sort of looks like flowers, but the issue is it always makes them sort of very tiny, looking almost too tiny to really work. It depends on your scale. Regular grain might work, but if you need to make it larger, perhaps you try one of these other settings down here. For example, if I make a clumped texture, we see that the texture is actually bigger, and I can make it more contrasty or not by playing with some of these settings, right? So I can sort of play with these things as I see fit. And I can say OK. Now the issue with this is, okay, well I've got one size set of scale done, but I still might want a smaller scale of texture for this. So I'll just go ahead here and apply grain again. Texture, grain. And yes, apply new effect because I'm going to do a different grain. And this time I might go back to regular. And we can see what sort of happens there. Maybe that's just too strong, so I'll turn that down. Play with the settings as you want and say OK. And now I've got this. So now I've got clumps of color and sort of at different levels of the settings here. And so that begins to work well. If I wanted to get really fancy, I could have done those two things on different yellow fills and then controlled them independently for a slightly different effect. And for bigger drawings or for scales where you need bigger flowers, you might have to do that. So it's sort of like on the grass where I applied some things on different fills so I could control them independently. I might have to do that for the two different grains. If I put them on two different fills within the same object, I could have even more control. So that's sort of a quick way of doing sort of flower beds. And I don't know, maybe this happens in some of these other locations as well. If I just go ahead and save that as a graphic style and go in, these look like they really should be some sort of planted things at the very least. Might be in other spots here as well. Now I can select this, I can select that. Apply those the two grain textures just got applied to those to match, and there we go. I'll lock the layer, I'll save it, and I'll move on to something else.